Hey friends, welcome to Woman Owned Wallet, the podcast. I'm Amanda Dare, a serial entrepreneur who has already made all of the money mistakes, so you don't have to. Now, I'm working on my money mindset, expanding my companies, and having open conversations with women around a subject that shouldn't be so taboo: money. My company, Woman Owned Wallet, and I are determined to help you foster a positive relationship with your wallet and help you create a life that makes you say, wow. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Woman Owned Wallet podcast. Today, I have one of my biz besties with me. If it sounds a little different, it's because we're actually in our shared office space. And I can't even tell you guys how much I'm obsessed and in love with Jess Bledsoe. Like, she's just literally lights up my life and feels very much like a sister to me. And I'm so excited to introduce all of you to Jess. So thank you so much for coming on my podcast.
Oh, of course. I'm so excited to be here, and the feeling is absolutely mutual.
I very much tried to convince her to be like the second host of this podcast, you guys. And maybe based on your feedback from this episode, we could maybe convince her to do it. But she's got her own podcast, and I was featured on that and had absolutely the best time. And actually, when I was featured on that, I was down in Florida, and I spent an entire month away from my business physically. I was definitely working. Don't worry. You can't just turn off entrepreneurship now. It's always on. But I was down there for a full month, and I just needed some physical space away, especially being January 2021. So right after the pandemic, and I just was processing a lot of things from that. But recently, Jess just came back. I missed you so much. You have no idea. From a month-long trip in a converted van with her husband, and she was able to work on the road too. So I'm excited to talk about that a little bit more with her and just kind of experience something a little bit different. Like, you might not have met someone that has actually spent that much physical time away from their business before, kind of how we planned for it and why we did it. Why did we need it? So I think I explained a little bit of why I needed it. That decompression time, just some physical space away to process a lot of things. But I think yours was probably way more fun of a reason. So why did you guys go away? Tell me a little bit more about it and just kind of tell us about the van. Doesn't she have a name?
She does. Her name is Elaine the Eurovan. So it's a Volkswagen Eurovan that we converted. It's basically just like a standard minivan when we bought it. And then we converted it into a camper van, which probably sounds a lot more fancy than it actually is, because we literally just like built a bed in the back of the van, and then there's storage underneath it. We have some like solar panels or whatever. But yeah, her name is Elaine. And this is something that we've been wanting to do for a really long time. My husband and I, we love to travel, and we work so that we can travel. It's really like why we do what we do, is so that we can have as much freedom as possible. And the van is a goal that we have been working towards for a really long time. And so it was really cool to finally like get to build the van out and take that trip. It really was the trip of a lifetime. You just want to see like cool shit.
Yes.
Assuming it's okay to cuss on your podcast.
Absolutely.
We just wanted to see like cool shit. So we took a trip in 2016 or 17 to Washington State, which was like the furthest west that we had ever been. We took a trip to Washington State, and it is just the most beautiful place that I've ever been. I want to say in the whole world, but haven't seen the whole world. So it's the most beautiful place that I'd ever been. And we had so many moments where we literally would just pull over on the side of the road because the landscape was just completely breathtaking, and like you couldn't drive because you were just looking around at how amazing everything was. And on that trip, we stumbled across this like campground that was overlooking the ocean, and it was mostly just beautiful. Like camper van. It was just like, oh my God, like these people are like living the dream. Like we flew there and we rented a car, and we were staying in some like lodges and things that weren't, we weren't staying in Seattle. We stayed there for a night or two, but we really were in like the Pacific Northwest. And it was so beautiful, and we saw that, and it really sparked that like that's living. Like we want to do that. At the time, though, we owned a service-based business, and we were really tied to being here in Louisville, working that business. Our clients were all here. So it really just wasn't a reality at that point. But that's kind of when we set that intention, and we really worked towards it. And so however many years later, here we are. We just finished our maiden voyage.
That's so amazing. And I love the name Elaine. Why did you choose Elaine?
I just like alliteration, like Elaine the Eurovan. We also have a forerunner. Her name's Fiona the forerunner. All of our cars have always had names names. It was really just, what's a name that I like that starts with an E?
Mm-hmm. One of my like really good friends just named their daughter Elaine, and she goes by Lainey.
Oh.
It's so adorable. And I was like, oh, there's just a lot of new Elaines in my life.
Right. Well, we also love Seinfeld.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like, I feel like she was kind of Elaine-like in that sense. So
the van has a personality of its own.
Oh,
You
yeah.
have to give her a name.
Yeah.
When I had a mobile boutique, her name was Betty the Bus. And I also appreciate the alliteration, but her full name was Whoa Black Betty, like the song, because she made a lot of noises and like broke down a lot of things that made me say whoa. So her full name was Whoa Black Betty, but Betty for short. And she like felt like my business partner for like, I don't know, a year or two.
I mean, think about how much time you spend in your car, even if you're not living in it. Like, you spend so much time in your car, and we love going on adventures. So it's just fun when you feel like you've got another like partner in your vehicle. And we actually missed Fiona the Forerunner while we were traveling in Elaine, because all the like road trips that we had taken up until that point, like most of them had been in the Forerunner. We did a trip to Colorado last year. We've done several, just like we call them rallies. So basically, like if we are driving a really long distance, like you can imagine, I mean, Colorado is like 18, 19 hours. And so we would just rally in that one of us would drive while the other person slept, and we would like run out a tank of gas, and then the other person would drive and the other person would sleep. And so we would just call it rally driving, and done that several times. And so when this was our first trip not doing it in the Forerunner, so we were like, in the beginning, we were like, man, we kind of miss Fiona. Like, she's missing out on this adventure. She's just parked in my husband's mom's driveway while we're gone. And I kind of feel bad.
Yeah. Like, sorry, girl, we didn't take you out this time. We got the new and improved Elaine to watch out for.
We took her on like a pretty gnarly like off-road adventure when we got home, kind of accidentally, but we made up for it.
Well, also you had your 2 dogs with you as you were traveling, and they're not small dogs.
No, they're not. We did have them with us. So we have a golden retriever and a like lab beagle mix. I mean, he's still a pretty good sized dog. And so it's a full size bed in the back of the van. Like, that's how it's the equivalent of like a full sized mattress. So we built out like a little extension at the end of the bed that was basically the dog bed. And we don't let the dogs sleep with us at home. Like, at home we have a king size bed, and like we still don't really let them sleep with us. Like, obviously we get our snuggle time in, but when it's time to go to sleep, they've got a bed in the floor. So we were really kind of wondering how that was going to work out, but they were totally fine. Like, we were just really fortunate that like it worked out. It wasn't all rainbows and unicorns, but that was actually a pleasant surprise, is that we were able to have the dogs. We all slept in the van comfortably. Really wasn't an issue, other than Boone, our golden retriever. He loves water, loves to swim. So having a wet dog in the van was not always the most fun. Or, you know, it was pretty smelly.
You need a lot of air fresheners, for sure.
We went through a lot of Febreze.
Yeah, I'm sure you did. Oh my gosh. And now that you're back in Louisville, you've rented a studio space because you plan to go out again in the bus after you make some repairs. And how are the dogs dealing with that?
Yeah. So we
miss you, I think.
They do. They are having some separation anxiety. So, you know, before we moved into the van, we lived in a really big 2-bedroom apartment, and it was in an old house, so the rooms were just really oversized and everything was just really big. And we only lived in that apartment for about 7 months before we made the decision to move out of it and into the van, because we didn't know when we went on our first trip. Like, we didn't know how long we were going to be on the road. We had sort of an itinerary. We knew that we had to be back in Kentucky by a certain date, just because we had some plans that we had already made that we were committed to, but we didn't know if we were going to go back out on the road after that, if we were going to stay in our hometown in southeastern Kentucky, if we were going to go to this tech accelerator in Chicago that we had applied for. Like, it was just kind of open-ended. We moved everything into storage. Once we came back, you know, we really were kind of forced to make a decision on what we were going to do. But it was incredibly hot while we were out in the van. There was a heat wave in the West, like has never been seen before. The air conditioner in the van actually went out. Like, yeah.
As I sit here in my chair with my ice pack, because I
hate being hot and I hate being hungry. I turn into the absolute worst version of myself if I'm ever either one of those things. So when we came back to Kentucky, we were just kind of like, we've got some repairs on the van that need to be done. We do think that, you know, ultimately we want a home base. Like, there were things that went wrong in the van that we were kind of like, we don't have anywhere to go. It's like, okay,
what if
even if we go home, like, we don't really have a home to go to. And
You just had a storage unit.
we just had a storage unit. And like we've had so many friends that offered up their homes and their driveways and things, which is incredible. But there's nothing like your house with your stuff, especially when you've been on the road that long. Like you just want to go home to your house and your stuff and just like, I mean, sleep. Honestly, we slept so much. The first week we were
when you got back here.
Yeah.
I just want to, sleep indoors.
Indoors, in the air conditioning, in my king size bed. Like,
Yes.
that's all I want. And it took a while. Like when we came back, we spent a couple weeks in our hometown with Adam's family in their spare bedroom on their full size bed. So by the time we did finally get into an apartment in our king size bed, it was amazing. We knew that we wanted that home base, but we also knew that the life that we had in that big apartment wasn't what we wanted to go back to. We really wanted to be able to pick up and go at any time with minimal effort, yet still have somewhere comfortable to come back home to where we could kind of decompress, make our plans for our next trip, and get some work done. Because we absolutely worked while we were on the road, but it's difficult. The national parks that we stayed in, there was no cell reception in 90% of places.
I know. I was like talking to you like every day before you left. Like we saw each other all the time. And then I was just like, oh my God, like, where is she? What's happening? But then I would try to like catch up with you on social media, and it was rare you were on there because of that. But also, I mean, that's beautiful as well to just experience life, like following you and being one of those people who offered my driveway to be like, hey, you want to stay with me? Like we own our house now. You could totally do that. Like I was just like, oh, I hope they're good. I hope they're okay. Like, and it was your first time going out for a full month with the dogs in this van, and you weren't sure if you're going to like it. Like, what if you didn't, you know?
Like, what if everybody was like, this is going to be so amazing. Like, I wish I could do that. And you're like, I'm moving into 25 square feet with my husband and my two dogs in it's a 2013 van. So, I mean, a 10 plus year old van. Like, there are so many things that can go wrong here. And by the way, I don't have a home to come home to anymore. So there were a lot of variables. So amazing. And it was everything that we had worked towards. And once I let go of what my expectation of the experience was going to be, it was incredible. But there was an expectation going into it. I had this vision in my mind of what it was going to be like. And immediately it wasn't that. So once I let that go and was just kind of like, all right, we're just going to have to like roll with this. This is what we wanted. There's, the worst case scenario is that I'm still out here living my dream. And like, there are so many people that would trade places with me in a heartbeat. Like, I'm not going to let the air conditioner go out ruin this experience that I'm having. You couldn't rally drive in the van like we did in the 4Runner because it's a lot heavier. Like we built it out. It's a lot heavier. It doesn't have a V8 engine in it like the 4Runner does. So we just had to travel slower. And we don't have a bathroom or a shower in the van. So we had to plan all of our bathroom stops. There was just we're not planners either. I should also say that we are not a planning people. So there was planning that should have taken place that didn't, but those are all things that we learned. And like when we go back out in September, we know so many things that we didn't know before.
Absolutely. When you remove expectations from anything in life, it is so much more enjoyable.
It is so much more enjoyable. And I wish that was like something that I would have learned earlier in life.
Earlier.
Like so much earlier. And I wish that it was something that someone else would have told me and wasn't something that I had to like figure out and
learn the hard way.
But it's not like I learned the lesson the first time, like in the 100th time. I think honestly, like this was one of the first, if not the first time where I was literally like, you have got to let your expectations just completely go. Like just erase whatever you thought was going to happen from your mind and live in this moment because there's really no other option. So you can either have a bad time or you can have a good time. And it's literally up to you.
Mm-hmm. You have the choice. You get to make the choice.
Yeah, you get to decide. Like, how is this going to go?
Yeah, you've already made the choices that this lifestyle is the dream. Like you've seen people doing that and everything. And of course, it's going to be a different experience than what they're having and what you thought. But if you can release that, it's only more enjoyable.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's really interesting because you were talking about like in 2016, 2017, that's probably the time we actually like met each other. I was trying to think about it. I don't even know anymore. Years and time no longer makes sense to me with this whole pandemic.
No, 2020 just like threw off the timeline of everything because I'm like, oh, last year. And I really mean like 2019.
Right. Me too.
And I'm like, I just delete 2020.
Just toss it out the window. just time frame, like I was like, man, because I had my store, The New Black, and I was in the mall and I was about to move out. You know what? Actually, I think it was 2019 when we really
It was
deeply
2019 when we really connected. Like we knew each other.
Oh my God, Jess, it hasn't been that long.
No, it really hasn't.
I feel like
we're
I've
just like soulmates and we just connected on such a deep level.
I feel like I've known you for so long, and that is so not true.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
It's so true that it hasn't been that long, but it's cool because it doesn't matter. Quantity, quality, quality matters, obviously. But I think it's so funny because we were both sitting, like we were trying to get into this accelerator program for our businesses. And basically, if you don't know what that is, it's like they prep you to be introduced into investors and hopefully have some venture capital connections that they can lead you to. There's a lot that goes into that that's separate from this conversation, but we were both hoping to be accepted at the time. And I think we probably just both had a rough day and knew that we had seen each other and known each other and like always felt great about each other. But sitting down for one of our first conversations, we were able to be probably a few drinks in.
Yeah, alcohol was involved.
Alcohol helped for sure. But we were able to like just be vulnerable with one another, which does create better connections, better relationships, and having someone, I would say, in general, to speak to and open up about money and finances and issues when it is such like a hush topic. So much of the time, I'm not even fully sure if I've experienced that with anybody before. And since we've had those conversations that were like, oh yeah, I'm freaking out because I'm applying for this like accelerator that might introduce me to all these fancy VC people. It's like now I'm going to be telling them, oh right, and today my bank account is overdrawn. Don't look at that. Just look at my potential, because my potential is unlimited, and I plan to be an entrepreneur, and I will keep coming up with cool stuff. But at the time, like you and I were both experiencing a little bit more like financial stress and noise, and we were both trying to figure out what to do, and to finally have somebody to talk to about that, like pretty much organically happened. But I think it's really important for people to maybe even seek out someone to speak to about that, because since that time, my like money mindset journey, my world has opened up so much around that. My trauma is so much connected to money. And as I've been like going through this journey of like healing and working through my money mindset noise, it has become so apparent to me that like it feels like therapy to be able to talk about it. And it feels so cool to feel seen and feel heard by someone else, or to even understand that I wasn't alone. Like I was so hard on myself, and to see that I wasn't the only one going through that, I was just like, oh my God, be my best friend.
Yeah.
And then like it totally worked out.
It totally worked out. But yeah, I mean, I think we found ourselves in a situation where we're applying for this program, and the event that we were at was kind of like a networking event for people who were interested in this accelerator and applying and just kind of like a really informal like information session, come meet the people who are involved. And like, for me, I walked into that room and it was one of those situations where I didn't want to go. I'd had a long day. I was exhausted. I have a shit ton of social anxiety, like that just creeps in at the weirdest times. And it was like a situation where I didn't want to go, because I didn't know if I was going to know anybody when I got there. So I didn't want to like walk into the room. I didn't feel like I was presenting my best self, because I knew that I'd kind of had like a shitty day, but it was an opportunity that I really, really, really wanted to take advantage of. And I was like, if you showing up means that you have one more step closer to getting in, and you just need to show up. Stay for 5 minutes, but at least show up.
Yeah. Show your face. It's important. And you don't know what's going to happen once you get there.
It's always fine once you get there.
It's always fine.
It's literally always fine once you get there. Again, something else I wish I would have known sooner.
Yeah.
Like, it's always fine once you get there, because I walked in and I saw you, and like we hadn't had like a ton of conversations, but we at least knew each other well enough to say like, I know this person.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable walking up and talking to this person.
We both had been in each other's businesses, like around each other for those things. Like you were a customer of mine as well. Like, and I knew already that I think I had sent you over some things. You had a truck outside the mall one time. So like I'd sent you some goodies or something, and you sent some back. Like we knew there was good vibes.
There was good vibes there. And so just finding someone and like connecting, and really I think that's what it was. Is like, I think that we had both just kind of had a not great day. And after the bar had kind of cleared out, we were still enjoying our cocktails, and we just sat down, and it was just like, here's all the shit I'm going through. Like, what are you going through? It's like, oh, literally the exact same thing. And like realizing, because you're always comparing yourself to other people, right? Like you're always comparing yourself to who else is in the room, who am I competing with? Like there's always this game of comparison, and I struggle with imposter syndrome really bad. I'm sure literally everyone in the world probably does, but we don't talk about those things. So if I'm looking at other people, I'm like, they've got it figured out. Like they know what they're doing. Like they're so much further ahead of me. They're probably making millions of dollars at this point. Like those are all just things that we think because we're constantly measuring ourselves to social media presence, or they're getting featured in Business First or whatever, and so you just assume that they have their life together. And so when you sit down with someone, especially sitting down with you, if I had looked at you previously, I would have been like, she's got all her shit together.
1,000%. I felt the same. And it's so funny because we're walking into this situation, like, I don't know, the irony or the juxtaposition or something of like walking in, having these like this severe, I also have a lot of social anxiety, and like walking in, it was really difficult for me to walk in that day. And that it's so bred, I think, from imposter syndrome and not feeling like I should really be there. And part of me felt like I didn't know if I wanted to have investors or if it was the right decision for my company. So I was going to learn and to understand. I was like, okay, well, if I can I like to have some more knowledge. So if I was just going to gain knowledge and not do anything else, I was like, okay, I can push past the imposter syndrome and be like, I'm just here to learn. And that made me feel a little bit more comfortable walking in. But knowing that I was walking into all these, it was a women-owned business accelerator. So walking in and introducing myself to a lot of people. And I have been an entrepreneur for a very long time in this city. So I feel like I did know some people. But yeah, from the outside, we all look like these perfect examples of little entrepreneurs because we can present ourselves well, we speak well, we're educated in our topics, we do know our businesses. But sometimes you're going through those really stressful moments and you're like, can I push past this noise or the stress to be able to be the best version of myself as my entrepreneur self, even in this moment? And like, sometimes I can't. And to be quite frank, like, since we've had like so many times when we've hung out since then, anytime that someone now tells me like, hey, I'm just having like a bad mental health moment, I just need to take this, take a beat, take some time away. Like, this isn't the right thing for me to do today. I find so much more joy understanding that someone's going through something similar now and is willing to be vulnerable with me about it than not understanding like why they didn't show up to something, or if they're mad at me or, making it mean something that it doesn't mean. It doesn't mean anything.
It doesn't mean anything. And I actually love that. I love being able to just be like, I'm just not feeling it today.
Yeah.
I don't have to make up an excuse. I don't have to like worry about like what the reaction is going to be. I can just be like, I know we made plans, but like, I am just feeling it today. And that just being okay. And I wish that was more normalized. I do think that, it's definitely more normalized than when I became an entrepreneur almost a decade ago. Like I would force myself into situations because I had a business that I was trying to grow, but I really didn't want to be there. And I really struggled leading up to it. And then even afterwards, like questioning myself, like, did you say the right thing? Did you do the right thing? Did they think that you're a bitch because you didn't talk to them? And it's really like, I have so much anxiety. I can't even walk up to you and say hello. I'm not a bitch. I'm not ignoring you. I don't think I'm better than you. I literally just cannot get the words hello to come out of my mouth.
Absolutely.
Which I think is so weird because you're listening to this. Probably know Amanda. And to hear her say she has like social anxiety probably sounds bizarre because she's like the most like personal person ever.
I don't know. Am I?
You are, especially with like your customers and people that come into your store. Like, I think that's just the immediate vibe that you get. Sometimes you walk in somewhere and you're like, what? Just like, am I not supposed to be here?
Yeah.
Is anyone gonna say hello? And I've never gotten that vibe from anything you've ever done.
I definitely break the ice quickly, but I think that's probably a thing of my social anxiety. Like, if I don't break it now, I have no patience. Like, I don't want the train to like pass me or leave the station or whatever. And I'm just like, oh no, now it's awkward. Like, if you wait a few minutes, I'm just like, hey, Brad, hello. Let's hang out.
I think for just women in general, like we get that a lot of like people think that we're like stuck up or we're bitchy or we think we're too good for them. And it's really like, it's literally none of that. And I was listening to Paris Hilton's podcast.
Oh, yeah.
And she was talking about how, like, you know, like there were all these photos of her, like, on her phone at events and, like, how she would always be
I heard that on the Housewives. Kyle was talking about that, which, of course, we love them.
Right.
So
maybe I didn't hear it on her podcast.
I think you heard Kyle.
Maybe I heard Kyle say it.
Telling Garcelle that on Beverly Hills Housewives because she was saying something about, like, be here. Garcelle was expressing, like, she didn't understand why she was on her phone. And she was like, Kyle was sticking up for her niece and being like, actually, she has severe social anxiety, and that's just what made her feel comfortable enough to show up.
Exactly. And that's like, and that's freaking Paris Hilton.
Paris Hilton has,
and I mean, I can only imagine what people think and or thought of her, but that's just, you know, it's like normalize women not having to be like the most social people in the room.
Or just like hospitable, or I guess hospitable and like being a hostess are kind of similar, but like it's my job to make you feel welcomed and warm. Like I do enjoy that feeling, and I want people to know when they're around me that I am an open person. I can talk to a brick wall. Let's go, brick wall. We're besties now. But like if I can't, like I think for me, if I can't break that ice and let them know that it is a comfortable, safe space. And I don't know if you realize this about me, but I host a lot of events and I'm very comfortable hosting in my own space and welcome people into my space. But when I have to go out of my space into other spaces, I definitely struggle with that.
I can feel that. And I agree. Like if I'm in my space, it's a lot easier for me to talk to someone. But I used to do a ton of networking with my old business, and now in my new business, doing a ton of networking. And I'm trying to meet investors. And that's just a super intimidating thing to do, or at least I've built it up in my mind to be that way.
Like they're just people too. I just happen to have money.
I know that. I hear that. I understand that. But when I'm like in that situation, it's just like I just want to kind of like shut down because I don't want to be the one to like take that first approach. So
it's so interesting because I meet with my money mindset coach, Melissa, every week, who has minisodes on this podcast. So definitely check them out. But she and I talk through a lot of those things. And recently I made a mistake where I haven't overdrafted my account in quite a long time. But I also operate under a profit first method. So I have 20 plus business accounts. So like shit happens. I send the wrong thing from the wrong thing. Like shit happens. And everybody that has ever had a small thing like that happen with my like business paying them has always been super gracious. And it's never actually that big of a problem because I do have the money. It was just sitting somewhere else. Exactly. But it's one of those things where I was talking to her and I was being so mean to myself. Like I was holding myself. I wanted to come across as holding myself accountable because I did make a mistake, or not a mistake even. I made a choice. I fucking made an active choice to spend some money that I didn't have. And I thought I could like wheel and deal my way through that situation. And like, I didn't. It came back and bit me in the ass. And it only is going to bite me in the ass for like a week. And it's going to be fine. Yeah. But when I was explaining it to her, like it was all very negative things about how I felt about my worth of like, as like the CFO of my business, which I did not mean to sign up for.
And these are not roles that I signed up for.
No, the entire C-suite of a business. Like I didn't think about that once 10, 12 years ago.
Nobody told me that I had to be the bookkeeper, the CPA, the tax lawyer, like
just the lawyer in general,
the admin assistant, the marketing department. Like literally, I was like, I just know how to do this thing really well, and I
just want to make dresses
to do that. Like it can't be that hard.
Yeah, like everybody has businesses. It's fine. No,
start a business. They said they'll be rich. You said,
Sure. And we will get there.
We'll get there.
We totally will, ladies. But I was explaining to her like all these things, and she was saying back to me those things of like kind of debunking my conversation with her about that money and how I was like negative on myself. And I was like, I just want you to understand, Melissa, like I do recognize those things. Like like you just said with investors, like I recognize that this one thing doesn't mean that about me, but it doesn't feel that way. So like, how do I get through that? So we had this like much longer conversation about how to shift your thoughts around from being so like negative and tie your worth to your business or your finances or just any like mistakes really that you've made in the past and like making it mean something that it doesn't mean.
Yeah.
I think when we were in that accelerator, the person would always say, what story are you telling yourself? I think she got that from Brene Brown.
Yeah.
So like, what story are you telling yourself? Like, what are you making this mean? And like how we're talking about women and expectations of approaching people or social anxiety or being a hostess, like all of those come down to the same point of like, what are we making it mean about us when it actually has nothing to do with us?
It has nothing to do with us. And it also only means what you make it mean. I mean, like I was saying about like the expectations I had with the van, like I had to let those expectations go. And I had to do that with money too. I had a ton of trauma around money. I mean, I'd be lying if I said I don't still have some trauma around money, but it was like my whole worth was tied up into how much money I was making or how successful my business was. And I had this idea of success that really society had imprinted on me.
Yes.
I'd never actually taken the time to think about what does success actually mean to me. And once I did, like I realized that like
you renovated a van.
Exactly. Like
and
I
traveled
so many things. Like literally so many things when I realized that like this version of success you're trying to achieve, it's not even what you want. Like it's just something that someone else somewhere along the line told you is what success would look like, and that's what you're working towards. But I had a lot of guilt tied up in like how much debt I had accumulated because of my business, specifically around my taxes. So many different taxes that you have to pay, and literally nobody told me that. So
exactly.
I made a lot of mistakes in the beginning, and I had a lot of tax debt, but I also had a lot of personal debt that I had taken on because of my business, because my business wasn't old enough to secure any sorts of loans or anything. So anytime I take out money for my business, I was doing it on a credit card in my personal name. And those were all things that were starting to snowball. And I was realizing like, what am I going to do? I've got all of this debt that feels like it's literally suffocating me. I've got to do something. And the something ended up being complete. I thought it was just pay it off. Like that was
right. That feels like
that
what you're supposed to do.
And like obviously, yeah, that's the goal. But I didn't have that kind of money. I couldn't even fathom how I would get that kind of money. So I had to get to a point where I was okay with what was happening because it was stopping me from moving forward in other areas. And so I really started working on my money mindset. Even being introduced to the concept of money mindset was life changing. But understanding like the kind of like coach that I worked with in the beginning, she really said something that resonated with me that was like, this is just leveraged money. It's not debt. It's not negative. It doesn't have any sort of like energy. It only means what you assign to it.
Yeah.
But it's really just leveraged money. It's money you had to leverage to get to where you're at right now. And like understanding that and knowing that like that's really what I was doing is like I couldn't pay those taxes because I had to make payroll.
Yeah.
It's like I can either pay the people that are working for me and myself for that matter, or I can pay these taxes, but I can't do both.
Yeah.
So I had to leverage that turning into a debt so that I could continue to grow my business and keep those employees on and keep paying myself so that I could pay my own bills. And then there was something that just came through recently that was like, I took out a loan for my business. And that was the first time I'd ever taken out a loan for my business. It had always either been bootstrapped, like I'm putting cash directly into it, cash that I already have, or I had small credit cards, and I'm talking like $5,000 limit here
or reinvesting like from revenue.
Exactly, like reinvesting revenue. So I had never actually taken out a business loan for my business, and I did, and it was pretty substantial. And I had a lot of like panic attacks around like signing those documents because it was like, this is going to take me a really long time to pay back. Like, what if it fails? What if? And then I heard something like, it's just money that believed in you before you did. Like, this is just money that believed in you before you did. Like, I know at my core, I'm going to be a multimillionaire. Some days I have no fucking idea how I'm going to make that happen, but that doesn't remove that like unshakable faith that I know that's going to happen. So, if I stick with that, if I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that I am going to eventually be a multimillionaire, then taking out this loan that would be insignificant if I were a millionaire, that's just money that believed in me before I did.
You're probably the first person that had told me that. And it makes me feel some kind of way about money. Like it makes money positive.
Exactly. It makes
and
it
it was
a good
so
thing.
negative.
It's like, this is something that I'm going to take and I'm going to turn it into a positive thing. And it's going to help me get to where I'm going faster than if I didn't have it. And I'm choosing to believe that that's a positive thing. And I go super woo about how money is just energy and it's not really real and like all of that. But like ultimately it still means whatever you decide that it means. And for me, this loan was a positive thing. It got me to where I needed to be, and it's going to help me become a millionaire faster than if I hadn't had it.
Well, it's so interesting because for me, I have a very similar story. Like I have credit cards and reinvested every dollar. And it's, you think of these things as like, oh, I have this like payroll tax or state sales and use tax like debt. And what we've noticed is that the government is really willing to work with you on payment plans. And everyone owes the government money.
Literally everyone.
Everyone.
And I'm not talking about like a couple grand. My debt in the grand scheme of things was so small, and I turned it into this huge mountain. Mm-hmm. And I finally found a CPA that like kind of knew what my situation was, but had worked with other people. And he told me stories of how people had like hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars and had gone through this same kind of process that I was going through. And it just made me feel like, oh, like that's, like this is nothing compared to that. And one of my other favorite housewives quotes is, you have to make millions to owe millions. little Karen Huger.
Oh,
like Real Housewives of Potomac action there.
Karen,
you gotta make millions to owe millions.
As Karen would say, she's a hot box. I don't even know what that means. Yes, you have to make millions to owe millions.
So, that's just another way of rephrasing.
Sometimes this is just fun. I think, okay, I'm 32. Like all of these housewives are double my age. Like most of them.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, damn, like I still have time to become a housewife. It really burst the bubble of like awareness to me or like whatever. I just think it's hilarious, even though I probably would be a terrible housewife. So I'd be like, guys, why are we fighting? I'm not interested in the drama when it's my own drama
session. Yeah. Maybe like, can we just sit down and like work through why you feel this way? Because that's a reflection of you. That's not really a reflection of me. So can we work through those emotions together?
Let's go see a therapist together, like Kyle and Teddy.
Oh God,
remember that? Yeah. Like, oh, you guys are better friends. Shut it, Dorit. We know. Even though I'm like the most actually like Dorit then anyway. So whatever. But it's just funny because like you'll think back on those things and be like, oh yeah, my life isn't over. Plenty of fucking time to do everything I've ever wanted to do. And not only, I also believe at my core, I will be a multimillionaire as well. And what I'm going to do with multi-millions of dollars is be basically the next like Dolly Parton versus like Jeff Bezos. Like,
you're not trying to be a space cowboy.
I don't need to be a fucking space cowboy, and I don't need to be a billionaire. I'm interested in being a millionaire because I have so many things I want to put it back into, and I want to work to create a world that is completely, my world is like ruled by women, because women typically make decisions that benefit marginalized communities over men. And so for me, I like have always had this like masculine energy around me, and I thought that was always really positive, but I'm a very feminine person. And I always had that masculine thing, and I kind of got made fun of for like my feminine energy sometimes, or just feminine characteristics or things you might identify as a feminine characteristic. And so I was just like, man, they're only like, I couldn't remember like anybody telling me I was smart or like actually helping me like get my business started or anything. It's like I had to prove to them that I was so fucking serious before they really took it seriously, like just anyone. And I was like, no, you guys, like, I'm really going to do this. I believe in myself. I trust myself. And I completely agree. There's been times when the debt feels so heavy, or bringing on new debt to make a different move, or, pivot your business in 2020 or whatever. I hate that word.
Pivot.
I mean, we did grow up on Friends.
Exactly.
But I feel like, now I'm thinking about we were on a break and stuff. But also the toxic masculinity in that show is fucking legit. Yeah. And I never knew it.
Yeah.
And it was like my favorite show. But anyway, so there's just all this stuff about when you have to bring on that new thing and you do get to choose what it means. Like, I think if I had done that earlier, and it's taken me so long because the debt does like the price of a house sometimes, or not even in Louisville, I might not even be able to buy a house because
I might be buying a Seattle house at this point.
Like prices are surging around here. It might be a couple camper vans. Like, I don't really know. But it's like the price of my house, I guess. And like, so when I look at that, I'm like, okay, well, all my friends have houses that are bigger than mine. They have more debt than me. They all went to school. I have 2 degrees, but they all got their masters and other things. And I'm just like, everybody has debt. I chose to take debt a different way.
Exactly.
And like, if I had the opportunity in the beginning to understand when I did take on that debt, how to handle it, how to manage it, and how to add it into my finances earlier, I wouldn't still have the mountain that I have. I would have had a molehill by now, and I would have been able to take on that next big mountain to get me to the next place. So I feel like if you're beginning your journey in any kind of debt, like I know women that don't have credit cards and stuff, and I'm just like, damn. How did you survive? But now I've reconsolidated I was like you, where I had a lot of personal credit cards. And I finally found a banker that would understand that I proved to them through all my bank statements, these are all business purchases. And if these are all business purchases and I'm paying 30% or whatever bullshit interest on them, and I can't even make a full payment, I could make a payment to you.
Right.
And cover all of those and have a better, much, much lower. I think I have like, I don't even know, it's like 4% interest now.
Definitely less than like the 27%.
Exactly. So if you can get to a spot where you can finally reconsolidate that, like you've proven your business, you've got all of that organized, and you can find someone who will listen to you as a banker, which trust me, I went to so many banks.
Yeah, I mean, I went to so many CPAs before I finally found one that was like, yeah, we can actually do something about this tax debt. You don't have to pay it all. The government will work with you. There's a program. It's called an offer and compromise for anyone who's listening.
There you go.
Has a bunch of tax debt. If you want to look into it, or if you need help, I am happy to share info. I'm actually making the last payment this month. It's been a 2-year process. We came to an agreement with the IRS. I wiped out about 40 grand worth of tax debt. I did end up paying back, like, I don't even remember how much, but it was like, it was less than 20. And I've been paying for that over the last 2 years. And I'm in my last check-in on August 23rd.
Damn.
And I'm so happy.
I'm taking you to dinner.
I'm taking myself to dinner
for
eternity. For that. But we can
beautiful.
do hard things.
Yeah.
Like, like we can do hard things. Everything is figure outable. Like it just takes, like, don't stop until you find the banker that will do the thing you needed to do, or the CPA that will do the thing that you needed to do. Like, don't stop. Everything's figure outable. We can do hard things. But, the one thing that I would encourage someone to do is, if you are considering taking on debt for your business or even just in your personal life, like really sit down and figure out, are you aligned with the debt that you're taking on? Is this a purchase or an investment that you're making because you really feel like it's going to move you forward in some way? Or is it coming from like a place of like panic, and if I do this, then maybe this won't happen. And so you're just trying to like put a Band-Aid on a problem. Because there were a lot of people that I hired, or services that I paid for, or coaching programs that I signed up for, or online courses that I bought, or whatever that like I thought was going to solve a problem for me. But at the end of the day, like, you're really the only person that can solve this for yourself. And so are you coming at this from a place of alignment and you feel good about it? Or do you feel like you're just putting a Band-Aid on a problem? And for me, it's a gut feeling. Like, I just know, like, this is something that I'm in alignment with, or it's not. And I've been able to really reduce the amount of money that I waste on certain things. But I think that's one piece of advice that I would give to anyone, is just before you take on any debt, like, we're not encouraging people to just like take on all this debt. It really is like, am I doing it from a place of alignment? Is it going to get my business or myself to where I want to be in that next level? And what's worth it? And for me,
it's like, is it really the money that believes in me before I do?
Yeah.
Is it really the push that I need? Will I really utilize this opportunity, this financial opportunity, to its best usage to make sure that I can not only pay it back or negotiate it lower and then pay that back or something, but like, does it get me to the place that I've been trying to achieve?
Or at least closer to that place.
Because it is
without
really difficult.
Hindering me even more. Is this just going to be another rock that's weighing you down? Or is it actually going to take some rocks off of you so that you can breathe a little easier?
I think it was interesting what you said about just, is it in alignment? For me, it's like, does it inspire me in some way? Does it feel good to make that decision? And I'm a very like quick person. Like, I am decisive. I like that about myself. But sometimes those decisions, I have to make sure, and what I have done in the past that I feel were like financial mistakes, like that I recognize I'm accountable for, I made those decisions. Like, say I took a loan, but it was like a really ridiculous high interest, or I had zero plan on how to pay it back, or I just needed it in that minute and that was the only thing available. If I had done a little bit more planning and understood that that desperate moment that I had was not as desperate as I really made it seem, made it out to believe in my own mind, like, if I didn't make this, what does this mean about me? Realistically, I needed to make other decisions in my business and I wasn't prepared to make those. So I kept throwing money into it.
Keep throwing money at problems and
at high interest rates and at desperate moments. And you think that's going to fix it. And if you're feeling that strongly about it, like, I would really take some time, remove yourself, because the best decisions are not made when you're upset or frustrated. And when I say desperate, it's like, I need it now. So I have to take whatever is offered. No. You're like, absolutely not.
Because that's how they want you to feel too,
exactly.
Right? Like, that's how they want you to feel. And
that's,
I've had to use like those like high interest, like loan, like business loans that they give you where they take out like money out of your bank account like every single freaking day to pay it back. And it's so high interest. It's literally like you end up paying back almost double what they let you borrow. And it's so hard to get ahead of it. Like, basically the business version of like a payday loan.
Yeah.
And it's so predatory and they literally make you feel like this is like the only option that you have. And if you don't do it today, the offer might not be there tomorrow. And like,
they will always give you money.
They will always give you money. And like, honestly, like the things that I know now, I know that everything is always working towards my highest good. So like, there's really not a way to lose when you look at it like that. And for me, like something coming through feeling like peaceful and good. Like for me, alignment sounds like, yeah, this is a good decision. Like, of course you should do that. Versus out of alignment is like, if you don't do this, everything's going to burn to the ground. This is the worst possible decision that you can make. Like, you don't have any other options. Like, well, that's not true. You always have other options. And sometimes those options freaking suck. Like, sometimes that means that you have to fire someone because you can't afford to pay them anymore.
Sometimes it means that's what you should do.
Exactly.
And then that doesn't mean something different about yourself. Tan France was on a interview. I think it was with Create and Cultivate. And when he was saying something about it, I think I was like on the cruise, literally as the world was shutting down in 2020, listening to this podcast. But he was saying some of the biggest mistakes he made were around feeling that he couldn't, letting people go meant something about him as well, meant something. And it's just like the business needs different things. And we need to follow what the business needs in order to be able to make sure it is as financially successful. But as we've learned, like, our version of success, and I'm sure you've heard this before, I hope, dear God, goddess up there, that you've heard it before, that your version of success does not have to mean it's financially successful. No. Financial success is different from just simple success. And I learned on TikTok, because that is my life now. I should say that I read it in an article, but that did not happen. But on TikTok, someone said the words like, if you're happy and like not comfortable necessarily in like a way, but like if you are happy, then no one can tell you that you're not successful. And for you, it's this van life.
Yeah, it's freedom. Like, that's literally all it's ever been for me. It's
success
freedom.
Is freedom.
But I always equated that with, well, I have to have money to be free. So it's like, I feel like that's just the default answer for everyone, is like, it's related to money. Like, well, if I made this much money or I had this much money, then I would be this. And it's like, I would feel free. Like, that's always the thing that I came back to, is like, I just wanted freedom. I am an Enneagram 7. I'm a human design generator. I am someone who thrives on like spontaneity and being able to jump from one thing to the next. And that results, like, if I am laying in bed and I'm freaking cold and I say, I want to go to the beach, I want to jump up and be able to go to the freaking beach. Like, that's all I want. Would I ultimately one day like to be able to fly to the beach on my private plane instead of in my converted Volkswagen van? Sure. But I love the experience of being in the van for now. Like, it's what I want to be able to do. And I love that I have created that for myself. Like, I said, this is what I want to do. I know that I can't do it right now, but like, how can I get there?
How can I take like a step towards it every day?
And so many of those steps were actually just feelings and clarity. They weren't big things that I had to do.
No, they're
just like
literal baby steps of your mind shifting enough to say it's okay to not have this expectation.
Exactly. And doing that like every single day in as minimal a way as you can. And like, I literally, like, I can tell you exactly where I was at, what I was doing. I was at a client's office, sitting at their table with Adam. We were working on something, and I said, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I had gotten my business to a place where I was successful. Like, it had literally burnt to the ground, and I guess literally, though, is not the right word, because it wasn't on
a service-based business burnt to the ground.
It felt like it had burnt to the ground. And I rebuilt that business. Like, I took something that should have just gone into the dumpster, and I turned it back into something that was successful and beautiful, and I still wasn't happy. And I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I just want to live in a freaking van and travel whenever I want to. And I was like, what am I going to have to do to make that happen? And it was like, well, I can't stay in the service-based business because that means that I have to be here with these clients all the time. And that's just not something that I want to do.
I realized that when we met each other, you had that realization already. And I had the realization that I had made the most money I've ever made with the New Black. I was in the mall and I was open 363 days a year. And I was so stressed out all the time. I had almost 20 employees at one point, or maybe over that. It is so gross to me now. I'm like, how do I never do that again? Because you don't always know your boundaries until you hit them. And I think we probably, like you said, you were in this client's office. You just weren't having it. For me, like making the most money and like literally still not having enough profit to like pay myself out as much as I would like to. I'm like, why am I working this way? Where then I moved out of the mall and I shifted my entire schedule. I'm not a morning person. You know this about me. I'm just like, I need to get there. Not on a rush. I want to sit and eat breakfast. Like for me, the whole freedom of my schedule is the most beautiful thing as well. And I completely relate to you with that. Mine's a little, I mean, obviously you have a lot of different, like if you're not always traveling in your van and stuff, but you choose the hours that you're the most productive. You choose what you want to be working on that day. You choose if you want to come into your office or if you want to work from your bed, like in your pajamas.
The bathtub. Sometimes I work from the bathtub.
You know, I work from the bathtub. I know. Why else did that? I mean, well, fuck yeah, you should. I mean, a little bath bomb, some wine.
Some wine.
Do you have a galaxy light? You should get one. It's like $50 on stupid Amazon, and don't want to promote that, but you know. But it's like when it's dark, it like makes the whole room feel like you're outside or whatever with these little laser lights. It upgrades your bath experience.
I'm always looking for an upgraded bath experience. We bought one of those hotel like shampoo soap dispensers.
Oh yeah.
And honestly, it's like
it's nice.
It's so nice because I'm not just like knocking shampoo bottles and soap bottles off the shelves all day every day anymore. Like everything has a place.
All day, every day.
Well, I mean,
you're in the shower.
When I'm in the shower. I am not one of these celebrities that doesn't shower. Like, have you seen this?
No,
like, there's so many of these celebrities that are like talking about how they don't shower and how they don't bathe their children.
What celebrities and why?
Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis were like the first ones to talk about how they don't bathe their kids until they see dirt. Which, listen,
Aren't they dirty because they're kids?
I don't know. But then there's so many celebrities that are coming out of the woodwork that are like, yeah, like I only shower. I'm like, well, listen, you do you, but I'm bathing.
I used to like Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis, and I still do in my core, but like the commercial for the Cheetos with Shaggy right now is like the dumbest thing I've ever seen. Don't make Ashton Kutcher sing. Like,
I don't think I've seen this commercial.
Oh, it's so bad. She's like eating Cheetos and he's like, caught you in the shower, and then Shaggy's there and he's like, say it wasn't me.
Say
like,
less. Say less. I'm already annoyed.
Why is this a thing? Wwhy do those people make more money than my business does in a fucking year in one commercial that is horrendous? I don't know. I'm sure something like that.
Sidebar. Sorry.
I mean, you can tell, like, this is what we're talking about. You need a friend that you can speak to that has your best interest at heart, that'll tell you hard shit, that'll help you find out those other options and help you make decisions when you're having that decision fatigue and as women that own multiple businesses and run multiple things, like it is so important to feel seen and heard because we don't have a lot of peers.
Yeah.
Like in our world, we need that support. And what we're trying to do is be there for one another and be able to be vulnerable. And really being vulnerable with someone, I heard this quote, it's like vulnerability sparks creativity. Like when you are, like when I'm designing my collections, like if I really like tear back, you know, everything that I'm dealing with, and I'm like, okay, what am I feeling like the most vulnerable about? And I usually find a word that makes me feel so powerful, and like vulnerability is actually like my strength. Like I can be comfortable being uncomfortable. We've been uncomfortable because we've owned businesses for 10 plus years. Like we know that we can get through it. And sometimes your mind's fucking with you and being like, bitch, no, you can't. I'm like, motherfucker, shut up. Like, yes, I can.
I cried like yesterday.
I cry like every day. You need to cry.
Well,
wait, you don't cry though.
I
really made fun of me because I cry.
Crier. You know, my husband, he cries all the time. He is like the most sensitive man in the entire world, and I feel like a brick wall because I am just not a crier.
But that's why we get along.
Yeah.
Because I'm like Adam, and you're like
exactly.
Ryan. So we can like balance each other. When you tell me something bad, I'm like, well, Adam, and you're like, no, just be on my side. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I resonate. Like Adam doesn't even know how much I love him. Everybody loves Adam.
That's totally, he hates when I say that, but it's true. Like literally, everybody loves Adam.
Everybody loves Adam.
Everybody, like, I mean,
how could you not
what's not to love? Obviously, but it's just so funny because he's really come out of his shell like within the last few years. But like, Adam and I have been together since I was 14 years old. So
this is another.
We have gone through a lot of transformations together.
Oh, 1,000%. This is another like kind of unique thing about Jess and myself is that we've both been with our partners for I've known Ryan 18 years.
Yeah.
We've been dating 14, married 8. And how long?
Yeah, so we've been dating 19 years, and we just had our 13-year wedding anniversary.
You guys, I'm 32.
Yeah, I'm 33.
And just 33.
We got married when I was 20. I literally couldn't even drink at my wedding.
There's actually this kind of interesting thing. So I do think it's important to address how you and your husband work together and like what that's like. But also there's this very interesting like power dynamic about we had very supportive partners the entire journey that we've been on, and my stability comes from my husband. Like I am, like you said, like I'm not an Enneagram 7, I'm a 2, which means I'm this like little helper, but I do feel very much like, you know, here's this next thing I want to innovate, I want to disrupt that thing, I want to move into this area, and no one told me I'm allowed to do that. Who gives a fuck? I told myself. Like it took me not 10 years, but a long time to maybe 5 years to call myself a fashion designer when I was like 18 or 19 to 24. And then I'm like, I've owned stores and worked for years where people paid me a fee for my professional, like I'm a professional.
Listen, I struggle so
designer
much calling myself a CEO. It's like, if you look up like what the definition of a CEO is or like what they do, it's like I literally do all those things and more. But it's just that like, it's just hard. Because, like, I don't know. I didn't go to CEO school. I have a freaking bachelor's degree in communications from a state college. Like, what? I don't have any credentials.
I mean, both my degrees.
But I've grown a bunch of freaking businesses and I've made a bunch of money doing it. So, like,
I can do it again.
I'm going to
a million more times.
Exactly.
But it's interesting that we both had incredibly supportive.
Yeah, I literally
partners.
don't know.
And we also
do it without, like,
but we also didn't have like the drama of like fuckboys being around. Like I never really dated after.
I literally never dated.
Yeah, like I just never was concerned.
In 8th grade before I met him. Does that count?
I think I had 2 or 3 before Ryan, but it was like high school.
No, I mean mine was literally in middle school. Adam and I started dating when I was a freshman in high school.
Do you remember when you
like maybe 2 other boys?
Really?
Yeah.
I think I'm the only person like Ryan's. Well, he maybe kissed one other girl, but it was kind of similar vibes.
Well, Adam was, he was just out here hoeing around.
Really?
Yeah. He has so many like ex-girlfriends from his middle school days and from his high school days. He's a year older than me. So he had a whole extra year of high school.
Yeah.
He actually dated my best friend. That's how we met. We're still best friends.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I dated Danielle. And Danielle and him didn't work out. And she called me a couple months later and she was like, because I'd broken up with my boyfriend. And she was like, do you remember that guy, Adam, that I dated for a little while? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, I think you should go out with him. And I was like, all right. Like, we had chatted on, like, MSN Messenger, so, like, we, kind of, like, knew each other.
Like AOL Messenger.
Yeah. And honestly, like, we never would have spoken to each other again if it hadn't been for that, because Adam would still to this day rather drop dead than talk to somebody on the phone. So, like, if it wasn't for MSN Messenger, I would not have the life that I currently have.
Yeah, even Ryan and I talk on the phone. It's very different than our texts.
If I called him on the phone,
he's not like that.
If I called him right now, he would literally answer and he would be like, hello? What do you want? Okay.
So tell me though, like, you guys obviously have worked together for so long. Like, how did you get started working together?
So we got started 2012 is really when we started like our first business. And so Adam had been working for another IT company, and I was actually, I returned to college. I did like a brief stint in property management, dropped out of college to pursue my real estate degree, or not even career degree. Realized that I was not going to do that. Yeah.
And I still want my real estate license.
I have mine. I just have to I
renew it.
I was in New Orleans. And if you're not actively a real estate agent, like under a broker, you have to put your license in escrow and you have to renew it every year. And I was in New Orleans on the day that mine was set to renew, and I was drunk on Bourbon Street, and I got like the email that it was supposed to renew, and it was like $60 or something. And I was like, I could spend $60 on renewing this, or I could spend $60 on Bourbon Street. Easy decision. So basically, because I didn't keep it in escrow, I have to take the test again.
That decision just felt super aligned.
I would make that same decision today, just to be clear. If I only had $60 to my name and I had to renew my business license, or I could go get drunk on Bourbon Street, I would choose 100% Bourbon Street every time.
I think so too.
That's saying about me what you will. But anyway, so I was in college. Adam was working this other job. We took a trip. It was like our very first road trip to Washington, D.C., Atlantic City, Delaware, like just a bunch of little places up there. We took his, like, all the vacation time that he had left at work. And on the way back, it was kind of like, wouldn't this be cool if we could do this all the time? So, like, going back to, like,
you already had that.
Literally, we work so that we can travel. And he ended up putting his notice in, like, when we got back, because he had been kind of, like, freelancing on the side for a few people, like, making a little extra money. And they were like, if you ever decided to do this full time, like, we have other people that we could refer you to. And so we were like, hey, what's the worst that could happen? Like, if it doesn't work out, like, we just go get real jobs again.
I know, that's always the backup. I'm like, I mean, I guess if I don't, I can still pay off all this shit by just having
somebody else will hire
a regular job. I'm
pretty
many skills. I mean, mentally, I'm definitely unemployable, but my skills are.
I have so many skills.
I have so fucking many. Yeah, I have all the skills.
That's a thing. So anyway, so he actually just kind of like set out on his own, because I was still in school working basically like unpaid internships. Our rent was like $795 a month, and our LG&E bill was like $200 a month. So we were like, okay, well, we need $1,000 a month just to pay our bills. And we got a contract for $1,000 a month that should have been like $10,000 a month, but whatever. But that was enough to be like, hey, well, let's give it a shot. And so Adam did that totally by himself for maybe 30 days. And then we realized that he's terrible at the communication side of things, like scheduling and invoicing and like follow up. And those happen to be my strengths. So I just kind of stepped in and started helping him with those things. And again, my plan when I graduated from college was I was just going to go get a corporate job. But then by the time I actually graduated, we'd been working together for about a year. And I was like, well, I really kind of like this, like I can set my schedule.
Especially when you like start so early and you feel like you don't have a lot tied down. Like you said, you didn't own the space.
We didn't have a mortgage. We didn't have kids. There wasn't really a lot to lose, you know? So it was pretty easy to be like, I'll give myself a year of us both doing this full time. If it doesn't work out, then I've got my degree now. I've got all this work experience in the field that I wanted to be in, which was in marketing, and I'll just go get that job. And so here we are, almost 10 years later, and we're still working together. But it really just kind of fell together. And we spent a lot of money on a business coach that was basically like a marriage counselor. Like, it wasn't easy. Like, I'm not going to say that it was like the easiest thing in the world to do, but we both have our own strengths and skill sets. Like, our first business was an IT services business, and Adam knew how to do all the technical things. And I learned how to do all of the business things. And that really just like carried over into the business that we have now together, is that we spent those years really defining what we were good at and defining our roles and our lanes within that. And we were able to carry that over into this new business now. But we did have a business coach for several years, and really like a lot of that was working through how we work together. It would have been really not necessarily impossible, but it would have been difficult because we had a lot of fights. I mean, we fought a lot. It was not uncommon for our employees to hear us screaming at each other in the office because we just couldn't agree on how things should be done or what needed to be done. And it wasn't easy, but I think at the end of the day, like, we came home and we could kind of leave work at home. Like, not always and not completely, but it was like, we still love each other. We know we're still on the same team, and like, we're still ultimately like working towards the same goal. So like, can we just not with work right now? Can we just be husband and wife at this point? And that's kind of how it's just always worked for us. And I know that would be really difficult to do, and know that I'm blessed to be able to do that. But I couldn't imagine doing it with anyone else, because it's also freeing, and like, I can yell at him, like, we can scream at each other. He's not going to leave. We will eventually come to a resolution. Versus if it's like not somebody you're married to, sometimes you have to be on eggshells a little bit, and you have to watch what you say. And
I was thinking about like Chip and Joanna the other day, and I was just like, man, I really wish because I love interior design too, and I've been like stepping into that a little bit here and there. But my husband also like does design all day, and I was like, Ryan, can you just be the Chip to my Joanna? He's like, I'm so much smarter than Chip. No. And I was like, why did I have to pick such a Leo that's like he's just so damn smart. He's so smart. And I think it's like, there's always been this thing of, I could come to him, but I did for so long with some things, and he struggled with that. So because it wasn't his business. Yeah. He didn't choose that. He chose, to work as an engineer, which is his like degrees and everything. But he does really well there. And he like communicates super well, and he knows how to make engineers help each other talk to each other.
Which is really freaking hard.
It is apparently really hard. And I was like, Ryan, I could do this job. Like, fucking hire me for $100,000. Like, let's go. Let's communicate, boys. Let's go. But like, between him and like, this other guy or whatever, like he would come home and he had his own work stress. And I always struggled to really understand that his work stress is just as valid as mine. And that's like a shitty thing to like admit, but because I own the company.
Yeah, you feel so much more connected to the problems because they're like your problems. And like so many, like there's so many layers as to how they're your problems versus like, okay, well, you're not at work anymore, so can you
like you can always just leave that job. And of course, I could always just close my business or whatever. But I had to come to this realization that his stress and his like work noise and stressful situations were just as important as mine. And I wonder, like, for you guys, is that anything that you've like butted heads with? I mean, because you had the same. Not the same because you do different jobs, but you know what I'm saying? Like, you have the same goals. So you have the same, we have to figure this out mentality together.
Always that we have to figure this out mentality, but there were always certainly ways where like, we'd be arguing about something and it was like, this is more important. Like what I'm saying is more important than what you're saying. And like, we typically had a different approach with like our clients too. Like Adam was the one doing like the work that they hired us to do. So he was on site face to face with them. Much more than I was. I was much more just the one like behind the computer sending emails, and like it's a lot easier for me to send a strongly worded email than it is for Adam to like have to say it to their face, So there was, and we have totally different communication styles too. So there was always an opportunity for it to kind of go that way. But again, I think it always just came down to like we have the same goal, recognizing that we're on the same team, we're not fighting each other. Like it's like. There were times where we would literally be like, we're saying the same thing. Like, we're arguing, but we're literally saying the same thing. Can we just stop? Can we just stop talking now?
Yeah. Can we not have to be the one that said it the right
way? Exactly.
Yeah. But I imagine with like Chip and Joanna, like he does do more because he's married to her. Like all the times when she comes in with that last minute change, I'm like, oh, if another contractor was on site with her, I'm just like, man, that must have like sucked for those people. But so many of these TV, designers are married to contractors and they do the work together. And I'm like, that's really smart. But then I was telling him, I was like, what if we could be like Shay and I forgot his name right now, but have you seen that? It's like Dream Home Makeover. Mm-hmm. Oh, she's like featured in Target next to Joanna and Chip. Like Shay is legit, and it's McGee and Co. And he like is the COO and like runs a lot of this stuff. And I was like, ooh, Ryan, you could do that. And then I could like go be the creative amazingness. But he's still like, no, he's not interested. And I think it is because his skill set lies so much outside the realm of like entrepreneurship stuff. And for him, like timelines are so much further out because these, engines they design are massive and they sell for millions and like other people do the selling and that. And I'm like, yeah, but I would do that part. Yeah. And he's like, no, I just like what I'm doing. You do you. I love you. I support you. Please go do you.
Sometimes like when you're an entrepreneur, it's hard to imagine how anyone could not want to be an entrepreneur.
Very much. That's a very valid
point. There's such an opportunity here for you to be an entrepreneur. Like there are literally like I would say actually most people don't want to be entrepreneurs, like
it's a stressful life we've
chosen and it's totally understandable why people would not want to do that. But to me, in my brain, when I hear someone, I'm like, that what? You don't want to? Mm-hmm. You've heard me complain all this time and you don't want to?
I told you all the nitty-gritty things.
All the horrible things about it and you don't want to?
I'm surprised. I'm so surprised you wouldn't want to take on this incredibly stressful, beautiful thing.
What do you mean you just want to go to work and come home and pay your bills?
I mean, I was like, I'll just hire you.
Exactly.
Yeah, you don't have to be CEO. I mean, I'm not going to put you on payroll. Let's go.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's so funny. Well, obviously we could talk for forever because we really are friends and we really do love each other. I mean, I think, right?
Yeah.
Right? Most of the time. I mean, we're like fine. No, I definitely think we could talk for forever, but we'll wrap it up here. And obviously, at this point, you guys know I'm obsessed with Jess and she's amazing. She definitely feels like a sister in my life, a sister I've been missing most of my life. So, Jess, do you mind to tell them how they can follow you?
Yeah, the best place to follow me is on Instagram. It's at Jess Bledsoe, JessBledsoe. I go through periods of being there and not being there, but I think that's probably the best. Or if you're on LinkedIn, give me a follow on LinkedIn.
I really need to update my LinkedIn profile. It is
I've been pretty active on LinkedIn. Like I said, we're trying to find investors, and that seems to be the best way to approach that. So
we didn't even talk about why you're trying to find investors.
Follow me on Instagram. You'll figure it out. Oh, and then if you want to follow the van, though, so there's not a lot of content on there yet, but if you want to follow the van, there is an Instagram for that, and it's Let's Go _exploring. And I'll give all this to Amanda so she can link it up in the show notes. But yeah, my goal is to document the van travels, but when you don't have cell reception, sometimes that's not possible. But if you want to follow along with the van life adventures, follow us on Insta.
I feel like I see so many people doing it, but I don't know anybody that's done it. So it's cool to know someone who's like actually going.
But all of those, all those expectations that I had came from following people on social media. And I was like, you're literally lying. Like, these are not true statements that you're making. So I'll probably take a different approach and be like, here's the shit that happened today, which is like,
I mean, you have to show people the real things that are happening. Yeah. And of course, we can all glamorize it. But the purpose of this podcast is to be like, no, it is amazing. But also, there's a lot to like get vulnerable about and to talk about and to get through together.
Yeah.
And really connecting with one another can help us do that.
Yeah.
So I think at the end of the day, you got to show the real.
Exactly.
You just got to. And I'm sure there's like 1,000 little cute quotes in this that we can pull out. So we'll definitely be tagging Jess and everything in the show notes as well. You'll be able to follow her and check out our journey as we open and build multiple businesses and become those multimillionaires. Yeah. But for now, we are so excited you guys stayed with us this entire time. If you're still here, congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations.
You did it. You learned a lot of crazy shit from two entrepreneur friends, two Biz Besties. So thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time. If you want to put more money in the wallets of women like we do, then check out our website, thewomanownedwallet.com. And we can't wait to continue the conversation on our social media. So definitely follow us on our Instagram, womanowned.wallet, and TikTok, womanownedwallet. You can also support us and be entered for some amazing giveaway opportunities by following us on Apple and Spotify. And don't forget to leave us a review. Thank you for listening to Woman Owned Wallet, the podcast.